We know last time with President Trump, we saw ISIS pretty much fully eliminated. But we knew with the Biden administration, if you just gave it time, which is what's been a full term now, that you would see these returns happen.
But I think what's different here is that this individual we know had a bigger plan. Because of his military training, he not only said, I'm going to rent this truck that is silent because it's an electric truck. So he used a system that many of us probably have used that lets you truly pick out the vehicle you want. And a lot of times it's actually less expensive than the airport rental car situation, because it's like doing an Airbnb for cars. And he picked one that was electric. So he had a huge truck that made very little noise, that had tons of torque, if you've ever driven an electric vehicle for short range. But he was also heavily armed. So he knew at one point that the truck would no longer be able to continue moving, and that he would be jumping out of the vehicle and firing upon people. We know he did shoot at least a couple of police officers. We don't know if any of the fatalities yet are linked to gunshot wounds, but 35 people are still in the hospital, 15 dead, and there were also explosive devices. And while those might not have gone off, thank God, this was obviously someone who had a multi-tiered terror attack planned out. How did our law enforcement officials miss this? When he posted videos online, he had that military training, he had that link to Fort Bragg, which has got links to this occurring of people being radicalized. And on top of that, look, I would just say this is a city that is supposed to be, because it is so wild on New Year's and almost every night of the year, the most secure for pedestrians. I mean, they have the largest swath of streets that are totally closed off to vehicles of many cities I've ever been to, other than maybe Washington, D.C. around the White House, which was done because of terrorism as well. So the fact is, I'm not blaming local law enforcement. I do wonder how our intelligence communities are missing this. And I think they're missing it, Logan, because the narrative that we've heard is you can't use the National Guard on January 6th because there's too many white supremacist and MAGA people in it. But the actual attacks that we've seen, these are all attacks, whether it's shooting at President Trump twice, or this attack, or the attack in Vegas. These are not conservatives. These are not the traditional white male conservative trying to take and kill liberals. It's the exact opposite. So we have to get the FBI and all of our other intel agencies thinking a different way, which is that it's not homegrown extremist white groups that are the number one threat. They exist. They should be monitored. They do carry out acts of anti-Semitism and threaten, so they should be discarded. But I do not want to continue to see a rise of politically connected Islamic terror again in the United States of America, which means we have got to get the president's team confirmed quickly. There's no excuses here. We have a Republican Senate. We can secure our country. We know this vehicle was brought across the border in Mexico. Don't know if there was any reason to stop it there. But again, because we know that this person was posting things, and yet the FBI and other intel agencies had totally missed it. They're never going to be perfect, guys. But I think that the Biden team has been, for 4 years, focused on trying to find bad actors that don't exist in great number because they didn't want to track Islamic terror. And now it's going to be up to President Trump.
And we can't let it become normalized, as you said, because look, in France, their Christmas market, after that attack happened, where we were, which were offices in Strasbourg, you could not get within blocks in a car. We had, someone who helped us get around. They're like, look, you can't do anything. We can't go over there. And they have police monitoring. Now, look, walking around London, walking around Strasbourg, and you see heavily armed, security and police was both shocking and comforting at the same time, because there was okay, you felt, and I feel like a city like New Orleans probably should do that. Go to Memphis, go to Beale Street now. You got to go through security checkpoints before you're allowed. Is it a sad state of the world? Absolutely. But maybe it's a necessary state. So what we saw, though, also was, Will, last night, a lot of people, a lot of senators started saying, hey, we got to get this done. We got to get the new people confirmed and ready to go pretty much on day one.
That's right. And as Jordan brought up as well, that the way that the FBI has been operating over the last 4 years and really beyond that, This was that two sources told Chad Pergram at Fox News that the FBI had no intelligence on the attacker in New Orleans before the attack. But we know several things. We also know that he had served at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty. The other individual at the Trump hotel bombing had also served there. They are saying that they don't believe they're connected at this point. But one of the most striking things, Jordan, was the very first message from the FBI after this attack was that they didn't believe it was an act of terror. But they already had an ISIS flag that was being flown on the back of that truck in their possession. And they went out and tried to control a narrative that they knew they would never get away with, but that was the first statement the FBI put out. That's what's wrong with our FBI, is that they're trying to spin a narrative instead of telling the truth, being transparent, and getting to the bottom of it when it's inconvenient to what they've been pushing. Remember, at Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, we at the ACLJ fought with and got confirmation they were getting rid of a training program where they were training people at Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty, that the domestic terrorists they had to be worried about were pro-life sidewalk counselors or people that were a part of Operation Rescue. That's the problem with the wokeness in the military and the wokeness in the FBI, afraid of the reality of the world, and that's what puts Americans' lives in danger right now.
Yes, and I mean, I think that when you honestly look at that, Will, that idea that somehow we're not going to start with the idea that the guy's got an ISIS flag, so let's start with the evidence we have. He carried out about the easiest terrorist attack you can. He has an ISIS flag. He has got radical videos that they found very quickly. So why on earth do you come out to the American people and say that's the starting point isn't terrorism? Obviously, if someone is found flying an ISIS flag while plowing into Americans to kill them at a spot intentionally chosen and then jumps out with a rifle to kill more Americans when they've got all those things around them and you've got the videos, why on earth does the FBI have to gaslight the American people? Now, I think people don't understand the definition of terrorism sometimes, Logan. We've kind of got used to this idea that it must be like highly coordinated Islamic terror of airplanes or multiple attackers and these kind of huge events. That's not the definition of terrorism. So I want to take people out to Vegas, for instance. The Tesla that was rented put in front of the Trump hotel there in Vegas that exploded with gasoline in it so that it would explode. That is terrorism as well. It might not be Islamic terrorism, but it is political terrorism because it is utilizing symbols of Elon Musk and the incoming president to send a message that if you support people like this, we're somehow at risk of more threats. That these individuals, and if you support them, you don't deserve to live. That is also an act of terrorism. It doesn't have to be religiously inspired to be terrorism.